All three readings today are matter of fact, quite direct. The first reading taken from the book of the prophet Amos tells us a little about some kind of regionalism. So Amos was told by the one in charge, Amaziah, the high priest of the northern kingdom. Galit sila sa southern kingdom. So parang Pilipino, Bisdak at saka mga Tagalog, Kapampangan, o Ilonggo, Cebuano, lagi tayong merong pagkakanya-kanya. Meron tayo laging regionalism at pataasan ng ere. Ngayon, sabi ni Amaziah kay Amos, "Uy, hindi ka rito dapat nagwiwika. You're not supposed to be prophesying in Bethel. This is the place of the king. This is the royal area." And so, Amos had to claim who he was. So my first word for you this morning is a W. Who are you? Well, Amos claimed his identity and said, "I was no prophet. I was just a shepherd, pastol, and a dresser of sycamores, farmer, magsasaka. Ganyan lang ako. Pero the Lord called me from what I was doing and gave me a mission. And so I was told to prophesy to the house of Israel." Now, my first question for me and for you this morning is, who are you? Have you really owned up to your being Catholic? Or are you a Catholic, a cafeteria Catholic, Catholic only during baptism, Catholic during the wedding, and Catholic during the funeral? Okay, 3 beses lang sa tanang buhay. Are you a Christian? Christian is my name. But then, there is a second question. I am insisting on this because the second reading talks about somebody who was rejected, like Amos. Paul was rejected. Last week, you remember I was talking about the thorn in the flesh. St. Paul was talking about a thorn in the flesh. And biblical commentators are almost unanimous in saying it's not a wound, it's not ketong, it's not kurikong, it's not COVID. It has to do with rejection. And that thorn in the flesh is something that he owned up to, accepted heroically, and did his work. And therefore, I am introducing the second W today, who you are, what is your work. But there is a third, and it has to do with what the gospel tells us. They were, however, to wear sandals, but not a second tunic. This is strange. You can only wear one shirt at a time, unless you're in Iceland. Patong-patong ang susun-susun ang suot mo during winter, or in Chicago during winter. I can't bear the Chicago winter, the windy city. But then, generally, the tunic stands for what you wear, stands for who you are. Therefore, who are you? What do you wear? What work do you do? So if you have two tunics, then which is which? Sino ka? Ikaw ba yung pare o ikaw ba yung lawyer? Kasi marami na ngayong mga hyphenated priests. I'm a priest, counselor. I'm also hyphenated. Last year, I was still a priest educator because I was running a school. Now, I'm just a priest, and I lay claim to that. And as a priest, I preside over this liturgical worship, the work of God, and the work of the people, laos ergon, liturgia, liturgy, the work of God's people. Ano ibig sabihin nito? Not a second tunic. Why? Because your tunic stands for who you are. That is your identity. Yung amoy mo nandun, hindi yung Axe deodorant, yung amoy mong natural. So, what you wear stands for who you are, what is your work, and who you really work for. So, If the Lord told His disciples not a second tunic, you've got to define who you are. Aminin mo na kung sino ka, hindi yung patumpik-tumpik, kuminsan dilawan, kuminsan DDS, depende kung sino kausap. You don't claim your identity as one who should be working for the justice and the peace that God brings and God gives us. At tayo nag-aaway dahilan sa ating pinapanginoon. Sabi ni San Pablo, bagamat siya'y merong thorn in the flesh, blessed be God, he thanked God despite everything, for He has called us in Him from the foundation of the world. This is claiming who you are. This is claiming what you wear. Saint Paul, who was never mincing words about what he wanted to do. Woe to me, he said, if I don't preach the gospel. And that's claiming your identity and claiming your duty, your work. And today we are convicted. Why? Because we change costumes all the time. Depends on what group in Facebook we belong to. And so we can be torn, not in the middle, but torn one day here in favor of this and torn the other day in favor of Tokhang. But then during meetings in the parish, we proclaim the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. And we don't know anymore what we stand for. Ito ang problema natin. Sa postmodernity, ang ating identity ay pwedeng yung avatar. Yung ating identity sa Instagram ay pwedeng ibang avatar. Ang ating identities sa Facebook ay ibang picture. Picture ni Paris Hilton o ni Sylvester Stallone. Yan lang makilala kong artista. Hindi ko alam yung mga BTS na yan. Ang mahal-mahal yata ng BTS pero yun ang binibili ng mga bata. Yung quarter pounder, very sloppy na kasi hindi na binibili. Puro BTS meal na lang. Many times, what do? We claim one thing, we proclaim one thing, we do another. This is your thorn right smack in the middle. The loss of identity. We used to be known as the only Christian nation in Asia. Not anymore, it's Timor. In terms of proportion, we don't know who we are anymore. We don't know what we stand for. We don't know many times what is really right or wrong. We can't even tell which doctor is saying the truth and which is saying falsities. Kasi iba sinasabi ng DOH, iba sinasabi ng FDA, iba sinasabi ni Fauci, iba sinasabi ng FDA ng Amerika. So sa Amerika meron puro nakamask pa, pero sa Las Vegas it's back to normal. Most of California, they don't wear masks anymore. And there are people who will never get a vaccine. And people who say vaccines are a mortal sin. We don't know who we are anymore. That's the bad news. My duty as a priest is to give you the good news. And that's precisely why I'm here. To give us hope, including myself. And today, I'd like to focus on those 3 words. Who are you? Claim who you are. Saint Paul did it. Blessed be God, because He has called me in Him from the foundations of the world. Amos was told to shut up, but Amos claimed his identity. No, I'm not even a prophet. But there is one thing I can tell you. God called me and told me to prophesy to the house of Israel. That's claiming one's rightful place. Hindi patumpik-tumpik, hindi nag-aalala, hindi nag-aatubili. And the Lord tells us, wear only one tunic, claim that one identity. So are you a Catholic or are you a cafeteria Catholic? Or are you Catholic only during binyag, libing, at saka kasal? KBL, kasal, binyag, libing. Yun lang. So, There are so many things that we can still talk about in today's liturgy. Most priests will talk about the simplicity of being missionaries, not to bring food, not to bring anything. Medyo gasgas na po sa akin yan eh. Kaya ang punto ko ngayon ay claim who you are, claim what you wear, and identify what you want to work for. If you cannot claim who you are, what is it you're wearing, what is it you're working for, then you are a fly-by-night Catholic. Which means, sisimba ka lamang pagkatapos ng homily, may dumarating pa ngayon. Meron pang darating pagkatapos ng offertory. Or you will come to Mass only KBL, kasal, binyag, bibing. Or kapag ayaw mo yung parish priest, hindi na ako sisimba dyan, sa Magallanes na lang. That means you're rejecting Amos. You're rejecting the prophet. We are a people with a tendency to be rejecting. And I told you almost in tears last week how rejection is a very painful experience. And we all probably have sub-stories of rejection. But as always, I end with the good news that will make our week worth living. And the good news is that He has called you from the foundations of the world. He has sent you to go and preach the good news and do what Christ did. And He has given you the strength. And I quote Saint Paul, who said last week, "My grace is sufficient for you." So what are you looking for? God's grace is sufficient. So, takot tayo sa COVID, God's grace is sufficient. Takot tayo sa rejection, my grace is enough for you. Takot tayo sa failure, my grace is enough for you. So welcome to the club of believers who believe, come what may, happen what might, that God is on our side.